Imagine losing your dream home to someone else because your offer just didn't cut it. And no, not because the price of the other offer was higher, but because they had a more attractive and well-crafted offer which has more to it than just the price. This happens more often than you think, but it doesn't have to be your story. Today, we'll reveal the secrets to crafting a strong offer that not only stands out, but gets accepted. So get prepared to unlock the strategies that could make or break your home buying journey. Whether it's your first time buying or you're a seasoned investor, we've got insider tips and strategies to make your offer irresistible to sellers. So grab your notepad because you're about to become an offer writing ninja. Let's get started. When making an offer on a house, there are 5 main things to consider: the price you're willing to pay, how much deposit you'll put down, when you want to close on the deal, how long your offer is good for, and any conditions that you want to include. Let's break these down a little bit. First up is the price. Obviously, how much you offer is a big deal, but it's not the only thing that sellers look at. What you need to understand is that sellers can price their homes in a few different ways. Some might ask for more than they expect to get, hoping to negotiate down. Others might set their price right around what the house is worth, and some may even list their homes for less than market value, and this is usually because they want to draw a lot of attention to it, encourage a lot of offers quickly. Of course, with the goal of achieving an over-asking sale price. When it comes to how offers are presented to sellers, there used to be 2 main ways. Either sellers could accept offers at any time, or they could pick a specific date and time to review all offers at once. In the past, even if there was a set date, a buyer could still jump the gun and make what's called a bully offer to try to get the seller to bite before that date. If the seller wanted to consider this early offer, they had to officially change the offer date, and the listing agent was supposed to let all interested parties know so that they could make an offer as well. But unfortunately, this system was kind of messy because letting everyone know could mean anything from a few days to just an hour or 2, which isn't always enough time to respond. There was honestly a lot of gray area, and it didn't really feel fair to consumers. To fix this, a new rule was put in place that basically stops these bully offers. So now, if a seller chooses to set a date and time to consider offers, it's now set in stone. There are no early offers allowed. The idea here is to make sure that everyone interested in the house has a fair shot at making an offer without feeling too rushed. Now, let's talk about understanding how each property handles offers, because this can really affect your strategy. If a home is accepting offers anytime, you'll want to show that you're serious by making your move quickly. This doesn't mean you need to rush over in just a few hours. Often that's not even possible, since you do need to arrange a viewing, but you shouldn't dilly-dally either. You want to aim to view the property sometime in the middle of the week if you can, rather than waiting for the weekend open houses, as that's often when the majority of people come. So simply, you just want to beat the masses. On the other hand, if the seller has set a date and time to review all offers, you can breathe a bit easier. You don't need to hurry quite as much, but you'll need to get your ducks in a row sooner rather than later. This is because with an offer date in place, the seller is probably expecting multiple offers. To stand out, you want your offer to be as strong as possible. For example, if you're looking at a condo or any property that's part of a strata, you'll want to go over the related documents thoroughly before making your offer. You'll also want to make sure that you understand the property disclosure statement and have all your questions answered, as well as reviewing the title and have both signed off. This will allow you to remove these conditions from your offer, which is going to give you a slight advantage, because the fewer conditions or subjects your offer has, the more appealing it is to the seller. In some cases, especially in a hot market, or if you're really set on a property, you might even consider getting an inspection done before you make an offer. This isn't always necessary, but it's something to discuss with your real estate agent ahead of time. Now, regarding the deposit, it's typically about 5% of the purchase price. But here's a tip. You can sometimes make your offer look better by offering a bit more for the deposit. This money is usually due on the same day that you remove subjects from the deal, or within 24 hours of doing so. It's important to remember that your purchase isn't officially locked in until you paid this deposit. And the nice part, especially here in the Lower Mainland, is that we generally don't have this deposit paid until after subjects are removed. The difference being that in some other provinces, or even some places within the province as well, they ask for the deposit up up front. So it's nice to know that you're able to do the rest of your due diligence before actually providing the deposit. However, even in the other situations you'd be able to get your deposit back, it's just a little bit of a headache. Now, let's talk about when you actually get the keys and officially own the house, which in BC is often done in a bit more of a unique way. Usually you finish all the paperwork and payment around the middle of the week, say Tuesday or Wednesday, but you might not get the keys and officially take over until the end of the week, like Friday or Saturday. In reality, these dates could essentially be at any time, given that your completion date is on a weekday because that's when the lawyer's offices are open. However, this differs from some other provinces and places in the world. People from other places like Alberta, for instance, find this pretty weird. They wonder why they've paid for the house and it's officially theirs, but they can't move in right away. And the reason that we do this is to, number one, avoid any extra costs like bridge loans, which you might need if everything was done on the same day. If the house is vacant, then you might be able to speed things up a bit and get everything done quickly, but that can make things hectic, especially for the seller if they're trying to buy another house right after selling theirs. You also want to make sure that you've given the lawyers enough time to do all the paperwork and the back end of the legal side of things, because you really don't want them to be rushed either. So by spreading out the dates a bit, it gives everyone involved some breathing room to make sure that all of the financial and legal things line up smoothly. And as I just mentioned, it's also important to the seller, especially if they're buying a new house before selling their old one. They definitely don't want to have to move all their stuff out more than once because it's a hassle and it costs more. So even if someone else offers them a bit more money, if your timing works better for them, that could swing things in your favor. Then there's a deadline for the offer itself. Usually if you put in an offer around lunchtime, you'd expect to hear back by that evening. Of course, your real estate agent will check with the listing agent to make sure that they're around and the seller's around and they're not in a different time zone or anything. But if they're ready to sell, they're likely prepared to respond quickly. And these days, pretty much everything is done electronically through electronic signatures, so it's definitely a lot easier than it was in the past. Now, people from smaller towns might find our quick turnaround time surprising since they're often used to offers that might take a couple of days to get a response. But around here, we aim to give the seller enough time to think about it without leaving too much time so that they start looking for better offers. And at the end of the day, it's a bit of a balancing act trying to keep things moving without pressuring them too much. And lastly, let's talk about the subjects and conditions that you add to an offer that you're going to want to sort out before buying a home. Essentially, these are in place to protect you and allow you to do due diligence to make sure that you're happy with your purchase. One of the big things that everyone looks at in a deal is making sure that you're able to get the funds or a mortgage on the house, and also making sure that the home appraises for what it's actually worth. Also, if the home is part of a strata, such as a condo or townhome, the bank's also going to want to make sure that there's nothing worrying in the strata documents. Because if there is a large special assessment coming up or there is litigation going on within the complex, the banks often don't like that and are able to turn down the mortgage. Another major aspect is having a home inspector check the house for big problems that could lower its value, like serious leaks, mold, or big cracks in the foundation. Now, you need to understand that they're not there to find small aesthetic issues like small scratches or issues with paint, but they're actually more so there to find issues that you can't see in the property by just looking at it. You'll also want to make sure that the title search looks good, meaning that there's no major debts or claims against the home that could cause trouble, or any major restrictions around the way that you're able to use it. And maybe most importantly is checking that the person who is selling the home actually has ownership and the ability to do so. This part is usually pretty straightforward, but if there is anything that you do have questions about, it's never a bad idea to hire a lawyer to look into it. The most common thing you'll usually find on the title search is the current owner's mortgage. And essentially this will be paid off when they sell the home. For strata properties, it's usually very similar. However, you may often see other things on the title search, but what you'll notice is that typically these are before the home was even built and don't actually impact your purchase. And basically it just has to do with the use of the land and what the builders and developers had to follow. So So for instance, if the building was built in the year 2000, you'll find that the majority of these things will probably be in the same year. Next, you'll want to look into the property disclosure statement. And this is a document where the seller tells you essentially everything they know to the best of their ability about the house's condition. It's a detailed form where they answer a lot of questions to inform you about the property and its history. If the house is vacant or currently rented out, the seller might not fill out every part of the form, and most of the time they're actually just going to cross it out instead. And this is very standard if you see it. It's just the fact that they can't make any specific claims because they aren't living in the property. Next up, we need to talk about getting insurance for the property. It's crucial to make sure that the place you're buying can be insured without it costing an arm and a leg, and just in general that it can be insured. So during the time when you're working out the details of buying the house, which is known as the subject removal period, it's a smart move to chat with an insurance company or a broker. They'll help you figure out if insurance is doable and what it might cost. This usually isn't a problem unless the building is really old and has had issues that insurers don't like, or if there has been big insurance claims in the past. For example, insurers often ask how old the hot water tank is and might want it replaced if it's over 12 years old, for instance. Also, if the home is in a floodplain or is prone to wildfires, such as areas in the interior, you might have to pay for more insurance or insurance premiums, or it might be tough to get insurance at all. Now, the list that I just gave you isn't exhaustive in terms of subjects and conditions, and there are tons of other ones that you can add into your contract. However, these are typically the most important and most common ones. Another thing you may want to include in your offer is ensuring that the house is actually clean before you move in and doesn't have any trash left behind. It's also smart to ask for a few chances to visit the house before you officially own it, especially if you're thinking about making some changes or renovations. Lastly, I want to touch on something that's a little bit newer and is known as the buyer's right of rescission. Previously, this was referred to as the cooling off period. This is a newer rule that gives you 3 business days to change your mind after you have an accepted offer on a home. It was added in order to try and prevent buyer's remorse, especially since in years like 2021 and early 2022, the housing market was so hot that there was people making offers without any conditions and then feeling bad about it the next day. And they really had no recourse. And unfortunately, despite the real estate industry saying that it wasn't really a great idea, they went ahead with it anyways. We actually had a pretty substantial report and list of recommendations and options done up that we sent to the government, and they completely disregarded it. And so far from what we've seen, it's basically just made things more complicated and might have even made house prices go up further than if they hadn't introduced it. But what you really need to know is that this cooling off period doesn't actually matter if your offer on a house has subjects and conditions. Next, let's talk about what stays with the house when you buy it and what goes. Generally, all the appliances like the washer and dryer, fridge, stove, and dishwasher stay with the house. Usually, I also personally try to include the microwave in the deal. However, about 1/4 to 50% of the time, the seller says no. But it's always worth asking. And obviously, this is probably going to depend if it's built in or just sitting on the counter. Things like blinds and curtains also usually stay as well. And if there's anything else in the house that you really like and want to keep, you can always ask for it to be included in the deal. However, what I've mentioned so far is pretty standard. Sometimes though, the seller might want something taken out of the house before they leave, whether that's because it has sentimental value or they just really want to bring it to the next home, or alternatively, maybe there's something that you really don't want to be left behind, like a dryer that you're already planning to replace and don't want to have to deal with. You'll want to make sure that the contract says that they are taking it with them in the exclusion section so that you're not stuck with the headache. And whether something stays or goes often depends on if it's considered a permanent part of the house or just something sitting inside of it. And these are known as fixtures or chatels. If it's attached to the house, it usually stays. If it's not attached, like furniture, it usually goes. But if you're not sure about something and you don't want any confusion come the time that you move in, you want to make sure that it is clearly stated in the contract. Now, when it comes to actually making your offer, having a smart, experienced real estate agent can really make a difference. If you're offering less money than the asking price because you think the house is overpriced, you should show why you think so using examples of similar homes that sold recently. If those examples are from the same building or neighborhood, that's even better and it makes you have a stronger case. Also, adding a personal touch like a letter or video can also help. If you're a family looking for a home, Share a little bit about yourself. Talk about why this house is perfect for you. Sellers often have some level of emotional connection to their house, and especially if it's a family that's already been living there for years. So if they're choosing between your offer and someone else's who might just tear down the home, sharing your story could actually tip the scales in your favor, or they may just try to work with you instead. Now, this isn't always going to work, of course, and especially for instance if it's an investor who owns the home and is more numbers focused. However, it's always worth a shot, but also $50,000 is $50,000, and if the numbers are high enough, again, it probably won't matter. And as previously mentioned, doing your homework before you make an offer can really help your offer look better. This means reading all the documents about the building you're buying if it's a condo, going through the property's history and any legal paperwork tied to the property, and making sure you're okay with all of it before you make your offer. Sometimes I even make a video for my clients where I talk about their offer, tell the sellers a little bit about my clients, and explain on how we decided on the price we're offering, showing the evidence. Personally, I think that a video goes a lot further than just a letter because you can actually see a physical person with emotions and expressions on the other side of it. I also use the video to talk about details like how we're flexible with the moving date or why we added something into the contract. And I've been told more than once that the video I made was the difference between getting my clients a house and not, because it made their offer stand out and made the whole thing feel more personal. Once again, it doesn't always work, but I always do everything in my power to help get my clients the house. So after you've sent your offer to the seller, they have three choices. They can accept your offer as it is, which doesn't happen very often unless it's at full price. They can just flat out say no and not even counter offer, maybe because they have a better offer or they just think yours is too low and it's not even worth countering. Or most commonly, they can send back a counter offer. This means they change some parts of your offer like the price or closing date, sign it and send it back to you. Then it's your turn to make a decision. You have the same three options: accept their counter offer, turn it down, or make another counteroffer. Something important to know that I don't hear very many people talking about is that just because an offer has a deadline like 8 p.m. doesn't mean it actually can't be rescinded prior to that. Rescinding an offer needs to be done in writing and isn't very common, but I've done it a few times in my career and it always surprises the other agent. So remember, just because you have an offer open until a specific time doesn't mean it's set in stone. The seller can always change their mind, so don't take too long to respond. And that's about going to do it for today's video. So if you are considering buying or selling in my marketplace of Surrey, Langley, or the rest of Greater Vancouver, or you just want to talk about real estate, you can click the first link in the description to book a call with me at a time that works best for you. Make sure you check out the next video in this series that goes in depth on all the important dates in real estate transactions so that you don't end up homeless. If you do have any questions, be sure to leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.